Morning, everyone. I'm the lucky one to share how we use the Thinkwise platform practically. So I was listening to the story of Peter Paul this morning about the flying eagle, and we concluded with the team that we're, well, down-to-earth northerners. So we will be talking about navigating seas and ships instead of flying the air. But yeah, I also would like to mention that indeed the 14 people that we work with are most of them are in the room as well. So if you could raise your hand, then the difficult questions may go to the row in the middle. And yeah, so I'm the program manager ERP at Wagenborg. At some point, it was decided that we would better serve our own needs and those of the external stakeholders as well, to build our own custom ERP platform again. It took a long while. Frank still has headaches about the sales process, but at some point we started. That point was 2.5 years ago, where we started building with the platform, the Thinkwise platform. We did that with the help of some consultants at the beginning from Thinkwise, but we really focused on building our own capacity internally. Talking about sustainability, family-owned business, you want to have the knowledge of the platform in-house. So we didn't go for the fast and the guarantee, which wasn't there back then. But we said, okay, let's raise people internally that will be able to keep on developing this platform indefinitely. So we'll see how long they last, and at some point everybody retires, right? So we'll have to see about the aging stuff of people if we don't have to worry about the technology anymore. Long story short, Royal Wagenborg is called Royal for a reason, because we exist more than 100 years, and as such we also behaved well. So the king, back then the queen, I guess, granted her royal naming to us. Anyway, this is one of the first vessels that we sailed with. It's still inside our offices, so whenever you enter, you get reminded to the legacy that we as a company inherit. Most of you might know, especially in the Netherlands, might know us from the single one customer service that we provide, a consumer service, which is the ferry to Ameland and Schiermonnikoog. But the core of our company is shipping bulk cargo, project cargo as well, but let's focus on the term bulk cargo in the short sea, so around the Mediterranean, the coastal Europe, Scandinavia, and also what we call deep sea, so a lot of traffic goes to the North America region. We do that with about 170 vessels, which are all planned, calculated, and managed in the Thinkwise platform. So I'll share a bit of the story regarding that. I wanted to start with a pestle analysis. Very briefly, it's often used in scenario planning, strategic analysis, but taking a few context variables that we have to deal with and that we try to well, cover as well as possible with partly IT. First of all, political legal shipping will be part of the EU ETS, the emission trading system for CO2, somewhere in the coming years. The deadline keeps being deferred, which is, well, EU. But anyway, it means that the sustainability story is really big and happening in the shipping industry. So how are we going to deal with making that sustainable? Because the electric cars are nice and hydrogen is cool, but, well, so having to sail a vessel with it and even be able to load cargo as well and sail it from one place to the other is still a bit of a challenge. So the magic bullet in terms of fuel, sustainable fuel, is not yet there. So how can we make it more sustainable in the meantime and how can we innovate on the side to get to that point as well, of course. The economic turmoil, well, we can tell a lot about it, but for us it means that when Corona hit, the ships stopped sailing basically, and then since then we have congestion in logistics worldwide. So business is thriving. Well, Ukraine comes in to the story. We have a lot of Ukrainian and Russian people on board. So it is not only a geopolitical factor in terms of engine or fuel prices rising. No, it's really personal level people that we have to deal with all the emotions that come across, and also very practically, if you go back to Ukraine, it's pretty hard to get back on our vessel. So it's It's really geopolitics at our doorsteps. Then the technology. It's the maritime industry is really at the beginning of the digital transformation curve, which basically means that you get called every day by some startup, some wannabe cool person that thinks that he's going to change shipping for the better. Well, that's great, but it's still very itty-bitty, and the integrated solutions to really transform your entire business from a commercial and operational side is still, well, rather lacking, which is one of the reasons we went for a custom ERP ourselves. Environmental, it aligns with the EU as well, but there are a lot of things happening on ballast water treatment systems, so make sure that anything you take from tropical areas, for instance, doesn't get dumped in or moved to Scandinavia areas, or here we actually see an innovation with sails back on board to reduce fuel emissions about 10%. So we thought we were past sailing, but it's coming back in shipping as one of the many options to really reduce your emission footprint. That's a bit of the context. Looking at the project, I will not share too many details about how we run the project. You can come to me afterwards, because we agreed with Mark that we would focus on the technology today. But I think it's really important to remember that digital transformation as such, is more about people and process than it is about technology. The technology is still a means to an end. Looking at our digital transformation, we start with the processes as well. So it's a business-run project, not led by IT. And we start looking at, okay, what do we do now? How should we do it, ideally? And then cater the tool around it. It also, I think the biggest bottleneck is actually the people. Changing mindsets, changing behaviors, because if you have a legacy of 100 years, you hear a lot, yeah, this is how it's always done. We've done it like this for 25 years. You're going to tell me how it has to be done? Well, let's find a way together, how we can do it better every day. The technology on top of, and I'll get back to this one, but on top of having the Thinkwise platform, we also decided, okay, let's make it cloud-based, and a couple of principles that we try to align with on the IT side to make sure that it's also sustainable from an operational IT perspective. I added data. You might recognize the process, people, technology triangle. I added data here because in the end, we also want to be utilizing our data. We have an ERP system, it's packed with data, often not correct, and definitely not used that often. So how can we also integrate that in the core of a project to make sure that anything that goes in adds value at some point in the process and is actually also used somewhere in the process? And I mentioned governance. I think one of the most important things that we should get rid of is the project thinking. If we're talking about IT, and I think, well, it aligns with the idea of Thinkwise and sustainable platform transformation, blah, blah, blah. Basically, world changes, you better change with it, otherwise it's going to be legacy at some point again. Even if the technology doesn't age, your processes, your people will still age. So how are you going to organize it in such a way that when my program manager title is gone, the same continuous innovation cycle keeps on running? Well, we decided to do that with the Thinkwise platform, and we utilize it for all the levels of systems that Gartner recognizes. Normally, you would see the low-code part at the top and say, hey, this is where you can really differentiate yourself from the customer or from the competitors. We decided, okay, we're going to go for an integrated approach where we use Thinkwise for basically everything except for bookkeeping and customer-facing websites. For business-to-business portals, we'll utilize the Thinkwise platform as well. So really cover that entire range of recording your data and putting it to practice, also externally. As mentioned, we host everything on AWS in such a way that we also benefit from it, meaning we have auto-scaling settings, we have this Indicium running on multiple servers and stuff, so there's no hardware maintenance, that's one step, but it's not simply a lift and shift, it's also really utilizing those things that, well, make sure that whenever demand or traffic rises, your application just spins up another server. And Thinkwise is luckily helping us to get that done in a sufficient way. Still waiting for some improvements there, but we get there with AWS and Thinkwise really neatly. So, if we summarize it from a business perspective, I summarize it that we're looking for single source of truth of data. Enter it one, reuse it wherever possible, and make sure it's trustworthy. Think from the customer, really that end-to-end perspective on a process, and streamline it as much as possible. So instead of thinking, well, optimize a tool for me as an individual at a certain step in the process, well, that's nice for you, but for the company, we need it to be streamlined in such a way that everybody benefits. And sometimes, yes, sometimes it means that you have to do one thing extra to make sure that the rest goes smoother. Inside, of course, as mentioned, we want to use the data, so better make sure that it's visible or used. At the same time, we summarized a long story of the IT architect that we had in the past and said, okay, looking at it, in summary, these principles we need to abide to with every decision we make on using the tooling. So, as mentioned, everything cloud-based. It also means that I don't want to be dependent on any on-premise server, like an Active Directory for access, or an Exchange on-premise, or all the other things that might be out of your control if you run in the cloud. Loosely coupled architecture, a very broadly defined term. I'll get back to it, how we use it. As one example. Anywhere, anytime, any device, we use the universal GUI of Thinkwise, which is basically a progressive web app that automatically scales with the device you have. I'll also share an example of that. And security by design does not only limit it, we don't limit it only to the Thinkwise platform, but also to a couple of other things. So I'll show you how we utilize the AWS file storage with the security by design. Okay, sounds great. I was just mentioning it, there's always a lot of talk and a lot of terms in these talks, and you're like, oh cool, sounds very great, and then you never get to see anything. So I decided to make a couple of GIFs for each of the 8 principles that we have here, and I'll talk you through it. They will keep repeating themselves, so maybe it's confusing, but yeah, too bad, I tried my best. Let's see. We called it bridge. The system as a reference to the bridge on the vessels, where you have the best oversight at sea, but also to refer to the fact that we want to bridge the gaps between departments, between our internationally dispersed companies, and also between ship and shore. And whenever you open the system, this is what you see. This is the maps component from Thinkwise in the universal GUI, in which you see live where our vessels are. Every 5 minutes, data, IoT data from the vessels is coming to shore and instantly visible in our ERP system. That doesn't only tell us where we are, but it also tells us how much fuel we are spending with a certain speed, how the weather circumstances are, and we have a lot of information on the operational side of the vessels. At the left, you see the menu for anybody who would be an admin in our system. So it's a lot of menu items there, but just wanted to mention there that basically we started with CRM, went live in October 2020 in Universal, and took it from there for the commercial department, which is called chartering in shipping. So we have a configure price quote application, if you will, and planning screen where you will see all the vessels that we planned. Now we're gradually moving to the ship maintenance as well, and the purchasing for repairs and any stock that we need on board. So leveraging the fact that we're an integrated ship owner, because that's what distinguishes us. We don't only have a lot of vessels, but we also do everything ourselves. We design them, we build them, we make sure there's a cargo on it, crew, and that the ship is operational. So we believe that if we integrate that into a single solution, we would be able to beat the customer or the competitors on our processes and efficiency. All right. The first business value that we mentioned is a single source of truth. That sounds nice. Everybody will say that they do that, and that's a pain in the ass in reality. So what you see here is that we have accounts, so customer relations with which could have addresses, contacts, etc., etc. There's no pointer on it, but you will see that there is not only an active but also a verified checkbox here. So this data is actually also going to our other ERP system, but also to our core financial system. So everything is verified before we share it, and anything that gets updated again comes back as a verification activity for a data owner, making sure data is correct at the start of your process. Customer focus then. From those relations, we have a couple of things at the right. You saw there are opportunities in and contracts. Here we have a couple of contracts, which in turn have a calculation on the pricing below those contracts. In the example here, you will see that we have contract of affreightment and spot. In the shipping business, the contract of affreightment basically means, hey, we agree on everything with the customer in terms of pricing, and the only thing for a couple of years, for example, and the only thing we don't know is when our vessel needs to be at the berth to load the cargo. The other one you see there is spot inquiries, which is basically, hey, I have a cargo here, who wants to ship it for the lowest price? And that's how we basically fill the planning with the spot cargoes. This also took us through the crisis in the last couple of decades. The shipping business is really up and down every time, but the contracts are the stability, and the spot is where you, well, at the good times can earn your money. What you see here is that from this contract of affreightment, as mentioned, I know everything already. The only thing I don't know is when do I need to be at the berth, how many do I need to load, and which vessel am I going to plan? So those three items is being added in a task, and the yellow one at the top is instantly available on the planning and simply has to be confirmed by the planner that indeed we're going to ship this cargo with that particular vessel. It's not a necessity. We can also add it to the planning, say it's unassigned, and you just drag and drop it to any vessel that you think is fit. At the background, a calculation is created as well. So for every contract cargo, we also calculate the numbers and see whether it's going to be beneficial for us. A couple of screenshots on how we try to provide insight. You see the vessel position map that I started with, the planning, some dashboarding within Universal GUI. And also we have a sort of my work list at the top left, where everybody gets their approvals and tasks to do. And, well, you know approvals, managers need to approve stuff. Managers never work in an operational system, so they're the biggest bottleneck in any process that you can imagine. Which is why we try to bring it up to their front doors, doorsteps. You see it landing in Teams as a notification button. Hey, there's something for you to approve. And yeah, by the way, we also see if anything on the API side breaks down as well. We also get notified. So that's what you saw in the Teams notification. The IT side then, because that was all business value. We use Azure Active Directory integration with a single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, as well as user provisioning. So as of now, anybody with a wagenborg.com email address can just go to our system and is automatically logged in. We'll directly see this nice vessel overview that you saw without any operational maintenance from IT, help desk, whoever. And recently released, we just took it into production as well. It's really great. I think from an IT perspective, that is the ideal that you want to work with. Somebody enters your company, you have a contract in an HR system, and all the systems are ready for you based on that information. That's the dream. Still have a lot of work to do there, but for our system bridge, we took the first steps. Loosely coupled architecture then. What we did is build sort of a central API management layer in the Thinkwise platform, where we not only configure our APIs, but also queue them. So every API activity is put in a queue, which is run continuously. And if something breaks down, we can retry it, or it's automatically retried actually, and we can manage it from there. So instead of having it hidden somewhere in a task or a procedure, we say now everything that leaves the system is centrally managed, visible, and we're in control as such. You see a couple of configuration names, which looks very technical, but basically it means we do a reference to a planning API, so the route planning. We still share data with the old ERP system. We extract data from the old ERP system using a very nice application of the upcycler in combination with an extra indicium and DB2 driver. It's too complicated for today, but you can ask Frank Wijnhouts about it. It's great. What else? And Coda is our finance system, by the way. Anywhere, anytime, any device. This is basically the use of an example of how the progressive web app concept in combination with breakpoint screens make sure that the data that you saw on the big screen is also available on the smaller screen. So instead of leaving out data because the screen is smaller, it's simply reorganized in such a way that it better fits the type of screen. Everything is still there. The good thing is you basically design them once and you reuse them every time. So universal GUI stuff, and also GUI work in general in Thinkwise, it's really low maintenance. Then I promised to end with security by design, which is AWS. We integrate with the file storage S3 of AWS, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that are rather common still in businesses. Sharing your files on a local share, which is often not encrypted, which is well, not accessible if you don't use VPN or any other way to be on your network. Version history, we thought of that. Ransomware, all those kind of things we take into account in how we use the S3 buckets on AWS together with Thinkwise. For every, let's say, entity, contracts, or accounts, or whatever, we have separate buckets in S3 where the files are written to, and they all have different credentials. So even if we get compromised, well, first of all, we have versioning, bucket versioning enabled, so we can always go back to an older version. Also, if one bucket is compromised, the others are still unavailable for any hacker because it's simply different credentials. Least privilege access, so only the things that you really need to do are allowed through the integration with the Thinkwise platform. Encryption by default enabled, of course. And we also use an antivirus on S3, a virus scanner. Only after the virus scanner said, yes, this is a clean file, it becomes visible. So we hide it also from the preview component or the download URL in Thinkwise. And only if we get the information back, yes, it's a clean file, it will be visible. So just a couple of ways. Can we do better here? Yeah, we can still do better, but this is a good start compared to where we came from. And well, wanted to show you an example of how we integrate very practically with AWS. In addition, any integration we do is hosted on AWS, and that's where the loosely coupled architecture comes into place. So we don't directly share stuff with our finance system. There's AWS in between, and if we change finance systems, we can always simply just redirect those AWS URLs without having to reconfigure in the Thinkwise platform. Then I had to add some key takeaways. I wanted to mention this one. Digital transformation is continuous. I already mentioned it, but please stop with acting IT as a project and make sure that you keep organizing it in such a way that you continue those changes. Again, technology is just a means. You're going to hear a lot about technology today, but keep remembering this, please. Leverage some things that the cloud offers. It's not the magic bullet. It's not always the cheapest option, but it really helps us keep it low maintenance and high availability for IT. So all in all, it's a definite win for us. The low-code concept really allows us to say, okay, the only thing we need to do is build great functionality. The technology is well delivered by Thinkwise in this case, or any other low-code provider that would try to serve your business. And the fact that we have a custom ERP, well, provides us the means to tailor our system to the processes instead of the other way around. That's a very risky business, because if you let the end users decide everything, you're going to regret that you even started this. So take it very seriously, and be very, ignorant sometimes on an individual user's need, and make sure that it serves your company in the best way it can. And the great thing, and the reason we actually went for the Thinkwise platform is that never ages, but in English it sounded bad, right? Software that never ages. So today they call it sustainable technology. Here it is. But the great thing is that they promise us you can just plug and play any new universal GUI successor in 10 years' time, and everything that you build in terms of functionality still works, which is great because we did a custom ERP 20 years ago called with the Lanza tooling. Everybody is going to retire now, so here's your legacy, and we're gone. And with Thinkwise, we hope that in 20 years' time we don't have the same project again. Long story short, the cloud and low-code combination really enables us to navigate the sustainability and digital transformation successfully. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Arie, for sharing this inspiring story with us. We have maybe 1 or 2 minutes left for questions. So if there are any questions, please let me know. I will throw this catch box to you, and you can speak in the mic with the with the white cross. So are there any questions for Arie or for his team? Yes, there we go.
Thank you. One question. This is a major project. And always at the end, when you take a look backwards, you think, oh my God, if I knew that before, I would have done something differently. Probably you have one as well. Can you share that with us?
Only one thing.
I'm just asking to learn from myself as well.
I think the biggest one for me was that I have been way too optimistic about the timelines. We decided to hire our own staff, which means, well, there's nowhere a Thinkwise developer to be found, unless as consultants, especially not in the north of the Netherlands. So you need to take time for building your team and allowing them to grow in developing with the tooling. But we actually needed the same time to align a couple of things with Thinkwise, especially on the universal GUI. Let's be realistic about it. But gladly, because of the size of Thinkwise, we can. And thirdly, actually, the business doesn't really mind that we're not that fast. Of course, everybody who doesn't have a system yet is still like, when is it coming to me? But everyone who has the system, well, the challenges just get started. Because the change management, changing the behaviors, changing how the tool is used, actually, as a program manager, I never get any concerns about that in terms of actual hiccups or problems. It's very hidden under the surface, but that's where the added value in the end is. And balancing that, making sure that once you have something live, you don't just also fix bugs, but you also help people to really add value with the tool. I think that's the most underestimated part of any transformation journey.
Thanks.
All right, one last question before we... Do I see... It's a little bit light. Okay, then we leave it here. Arie, thank you very much for sharing your story today. Give him another great round of applause, please.